And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and these are some incredibly unique cards in the Commander format that I have to make specific videos about cards like this because they're so unique in what they're doing. And when it comes to deck building, that's really important because, first of all, some of these cards are just so unique and interesting, and no other card does anything like it, that you might enable yourself to do some really cool, interesting combos with some of these cards, and I'll throw a few out. Another thing that makes a lot of these cards unique is the colors they're in, right? Some of these cards are just so unique with what they're doing in those colors. That makes it very important. Of course, again, in deck building in the Commander format, that's always going to be important because we're limited on the colors we can use. So for example, I'll just start out with Fateful Handoff. Came out in Brothers War, 3 and a black sorcery. Draw cards equal to the mana value of target artifact or creature you control. An opponent gains control of that permanent. This is a very important card to take note of as a deck builder in the Commander format because it's the only black card that is going to be donating creatures or artifacts to your opponents. And in some decks, you might desperately want to be doing that, right? If you're playing a Yukoro the Prisoner deck, you know, for all the like 5 people out there that have that deck, you must have been super excited when you saw this card because now I have a mono black donate effect that I can give my really crappy commander to somebody and make them sack all their creatures. That's why taking note of cards like this can be really, really important. Volcano Helen is another card that just has an incredibly unique ability. It doesn't look like much, but in actuality, this has an ability that no other card has, and of course it's from Planar Chaos, so we shouldn't be surprised. It's one of the most interesting sets in Magic's history. 2 red Hellion, 6/5. So 4 mana 6/5, that's not bad. Volcano Helen has Echo X, where X is your life total. So probably that's really bad in the Commander format. It's unlikely that you will be paying the Echo for this, although I suppose it is a possibility if you're really late in the game and you got like 3 life. The important part though here is the ability. When Volcano Helen enters the battlefield, it deals an amount of damage of your choice to you and target creature. The damage can't be prevented. So of course the important part here is you can choose any number you want, right? This enters the battlefield and it deals an amount of damage to you, which of course, got to be careful there. But if you got 100 life, you can say 99 here. You could do 99 damage to a creature if you want to. What other card does that in the Commander format for 4 mana? Obviously, if you have some giant X spell, you could do that. But what card in the history of Magic is going to be able to do a ridiculous amount of damage like that for only 4 mana? Now, how are you going to use that? There might be some interesting ways. Stuffy Doll probably is one of the best ways. If you have a Stuffy Doll type of deck or a deck where you want to be punching your own creatures, right? Obviously, you could very easily get any of your opponent's creatures off the battlefield with this, but if you want to be hitting your own creatures, that's where I think this gets really good. I can just kill my opponent with a Stuffy Doll type of effect, right? So that's where you might want to look at slotting in a card like this, or it works really, really good with my next card on the list here, Swans of Brin Argol, 2 and 2 Azorius hybrid mana, so white and blue, bird spirit, 4/3 with flying. If a source would deal damage to swans, prevent that damage. The source's controller draws cards equal to the damage prevented this way. I brought this card up on a video a while ago. I think I had put it in my Mirad deck that I put together because there's a commander that is throwing damage around. And I thought, okay, well, if you're in a white-blue deck that's throwing damage around, unfortunately, there's not a lot of those. You can throw damage to your own swans and get a bunch of card draw off it, right? So your Mirad can shoot your swans for 4, draw 4 cards, pretty neat. Of course, your opponents will get it as well, right? If your opponent casts a Blasphemous Act, they're going to draw a ton of cards. Your swans aren't going to die because, of course, the damage is prevented, but your opponent's going to draw 13 cards. Not a card in the history of Magic that is going to be doing something like that, certainly. It is very niche, but it has its places. Planar Guide is a very unique card. Again, might not look like it, but it is. I've done a lot of research in this topic because I like blinking decks, I like ETB decks, that kind of stuff, and I've talked about this card before. 1 white mana human cleric, 1/1, 3 and a white, exile Planar Guide, exile all creatures at the beginning of the next end step, return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control. So this is unique in a couple of ways. The first one is it's this mass blink spell on a creature that you don't really see, but it's even more unique in the fact that this is really the only way to do it. The only way to blink all creatures, in other words, mine and my opponents, is with this card. This is the only card in Magic's history that will blink every single creature on the battlefield. There's a couple of great ways to use this card. One, again, the combo potential here, and the really neat combo that I talked about on my channel before is with Gather Specimens. It says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your opponent's control, it enters under your control instead this turn, so I can use my planar guide, blink all creatures, then I cast Gather Specimens, and when those creatures come back on the end step, I get all of them. It's like a massive insurrection, but lasts permanently. Pretty neat little combo. You can use Theoretical Duplication the same way, where whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your opponent's control this turn, you create a token copy of it. So this version is going to make you less of an arch enemy here, because instead of stealing your opponent's creatures, you're just creating a token copy of all of them. This also is a fantastic token hate card. I've had this card in play before, and whenever you have this card in play, the guy who's playing the token deck and just cranking out those creature tokens, he's just wasting his time, because at any time you can pay 4 mana, exile all creatures, and of course token creatures don't come back. They're just gone forever. So this can be used in that way as well. It's a very unique card, actually. Mirad Fantasiam is a card I've talked about recently in a 5 cards video, so I won't harp on it too much, but essentially this card is one of the best milling options in the entire game of Magic. So 3 blue, spirit, 5/1 with flying, pay 1 and a blue, Mirad Fantasiam's owner shuffles it into their library. If that player does, they reveal cards from the top of their library until they reveal a card named Mirad Fantasiam, put it onto the battlefield, and put the rest of the cards into their graveyard is the important wording there. And of course, the same name thing doesn't work particularly well in the Commander format unless you want to be putting lots of cards into your graveyard, right? If you want to be self-milling, this is one of the best ways to do it. If you got this guy in play, you pay the 2, shuffle it into your library, you're going to guaranteed get it back, which is great. So you're always going to have this 5/1 flyer in play, which ain't bad, but wherever it happens to end up in your library when you shuffle it in, you're going to mill that many cards into your graveyard. So it fills your graveyard really, really easily. And as a lot of people pointed out in that video, you can clone this guy and it becomes even better, right? If I make a clone copy of my Mirad Fantasiam, now I have 0 Mirad Phantasms in my library, of course. I will pay the 2 on the clone copy. The clone copy gets shuffled into my library, and of course there still is no Mirad Phantasms in my library, because the clone copy that's shuffled in is now just a clone again, and I will mill my entire library. Great way to get that Lab Maniac win if you're looking for it. So another neat way to use this card. Just very, very unique card in the Commander format. One of the most unique cards in the history of Magic is Lightning Storm, and where exactly are you going to use this? I'm not too sure, but it is incredibly unique, really unique. 1 red instant. Lightning Storm deals X damage to any target, where X is 3 plus the number of charge counters on Lightning Storm. What? We have an instant that has charge counters on it? How does that work? Well, it works because this is, as far as I know, the only card in the history of the game that is a spell, so an instant or sorcery, that has an activated ability. It has an activated ability that only works while it is on the stack. You discard a land card to put 2 charge counters on Lightning Storm, right? So the activation cost here is discard a land card. When you do, you put 2 charge counters on it. You may choose a new target for it. Any player may activate this ability. That could be dangerous, but only if Lightning Storm is on the stack, of course. People have probably seen this played in other formats. It does get played in other formats to pretty good effect. I've seen it used before, even though it seems like a very fringe card. It actually has been used in some pretty competitive decks. If you have a discard land deck, that's probably where this is a good fit. It is just an incredibly unique card for a multitude of reasons. The biggest one being, it is an instant that has an activated ability that can only be used on the stack. It doesn't get much more unique than that. Really, really unique card that, again, I just saw used in a game with my patrons on my Discord, Void Maw, and I had seen this card before, and funny enough, it's also from Cold Snap. Really interesting set. It does have some pretty unique cards, and this one is really, really unique, and it was used in a really unique combo in that game. 4 black horror, 4/5 with trample. If another creature would die, exile it instead. So this is sort of graveyard hate. You know, that is a very usable ability in a Commander game. However, it also works with the second ability, and this is the really unique part. Put a card exiled with Void Maw into its owner's graveyard. Void Maw gets +2 until end of turn. So this is a card that will put a card from exile exile back into the graveyard. There's not a lot of cards that do that. That alone is very unique. However, this is only cards exiled with Voidmaw, right? This will not work like Pull from Eternity, where I can put any card exiled. This is only the cards exiled with Voidmaw. You can get into some funky scenarios here where I get some sort of a board wipe that keeps my Voidmaw around. So like a Dune Blast sort of board wipe where I choose my Voidmaw, I destroy all other creatures. All those creatures get exiled, and then I can put all of them, right? Because activating this ability is just put one of those creatures that were exiled with it into owner's graveyard, and I make my Voidmaw enormous by putting all those creatures back into the graveyard. So I have this huge trampling creature, might be able to knock out at least one player with that play. The combo that was used by my patron, though, is a very unique one, and it is with Fate Stitcher, or any unearth creature will work here. And the reason why an unearth creature works here is because with unearth, if you have an effect that exiles already, the unearth won't exile, if that makes sense, right? So the unearth is going to want to exile that creature if it gets put anywhere else, but if it's already being put into exile, that essentially replaces the exile from the unearth. So like blinking, for example, right? If I have an unearthed creature and a Conjurer's Closet, instead of that creature getting exiled on the end step by my unearth ability, it gets exiled by the Conjurer's Closet, comes back into play, and now it will permanently stay in play. Neat little gimmick you can do there in your unearthed deck, but how does that work with Voidmaw? Well, whenever another creature dies, exile it instead. So of course you have to have that creature die. Any sack outlet will work here. The best sack outlet, of course, being Phyrexian Altar, because we can sacrifice that Fate Stitcher for 1 blue mana. So we 1 blue mana, unearth our Fate Stitcher, it comes into play. Of course, we can use it right away because it's got haste, so we can use it to tap or untap anything we want. Then we sacrifice it to our Phyrexian Altar again. Both your Voidmaw and your unearth ability are going to want to put it in exile, and you just choose to use the Voidmaw ability to put it in exile instead of the unearth. So because the Voidmaw has exiled it, now we can activate the ability. Put a card exiled with Voidmaw into owner's graveyard. So we put the Fate Stitcher back into the graveyard. Our creature gets +2/+2, so that's another little added bonus here. And then we use the 1 blue mana for the Phyrexian Altar to repeat the process. And this can create a whole lot of situations. You can be untapping and tapping stuff. Your Voidmaw gets humongous. There's obviously a lot you can do from there. Just a really neat combo with this very, very unique card, right? That's just one example. The one that I saw, there's probably a lot of other ways you can do it as well. Again, unearth works here. A lot of things probably work here. This is just a very unique card that can probably enable a lot of really interesting scenarios. And I'm going to end off this video with just one of the most unique cards I've ever seen, and just a funny one. This is not a great card by any stretch of the imagination, but if by some chance you actually want to be doing this in a Commander game, this is the only card that I know that does it. Street Sweeper. That's right. We have a card in the game of Magic that is a Street Sweeper. I'm not sure if you knew this card existed. If you were going to imagine a card called Street Sweeper, what exactly would it be doing? It's going to be cleaning the streets. It's going to be cleaning, of course, lands. This is an incredibly thematic card. It's super funny. It's super unique. It's super interesting. I thought I would tack it on to the end of this video. So it's a 6 mana artifact creature construct 4/6. When it attacks, destroy all auras attached to target land. That is maybe one of the most niche cards I have ever seen in my life. It is so incredibly specific, but there's no other card that does that, I don't think. So if you want to be doing that, you can do it with this card. Why do you want to be doing this? Destroy all auras attached to target land. I mean, here's a way to use it. It's a super janky way, but here is a way to use it. I'm playing a mono red deck. My buddy loves Song of the Dryads. He always casts it on my Krenko, like my commander, right? This is a way to get it off in mono red, right? I'm coming up with a really fringe scenario to use this incredibly fringe card. But if you got that Krenko deck and your buddy always likes putting a Song of Dryads on your commander, of course it turns into a land. So now it is a land with an aura attached to it, and my Street Sweeper will sweep that aura right off my commander. So it turns back into a creature again. What a funny, interesting card. And again, thematically, I absolutely love it. The flavor here is fantastic. It's cleaning the streets, right? It's cleaning those auras off, putting it back where it belongs. Really unique, interesting card. All of the cards in this video are incredibly unique and interesting. That's why I like to bring up cards like this. I wouldn't necessarily talk about these cards in any video where I'm recommending cards like you guys should be playing these cards more. No, I don't think a lot of these cards need to be played more. They are very fringe and niche in a lot of cases, but I like to bring up cards like this in videos like this to bring awareness of the very unique mechanics that you can be using here. Again, there's only certain decks that probably want to to be playing some of these cards, but there's also some really interesting combos and crazy situations you can get into as well. Let me know what you guys think, and if you are playing any of these cards, that's the most important part. I want to know if any of you guys are actually using any of these really unique cards in any of your decks. That is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.